the best chainsaw brand for you? Is it Stihl? Is it Echo? Is it Husqvarna? Is it Poulan? Is it McCulloch? Which one's your favorite? Which one should you get? Let's talk about it. The brands that you purchase say a lot about you, whether it's a truck, a chainsaw, underwear, whatever. It all matters to you, but not really to anybody else, unless you're a member of the fan club, the fanboy club. They all work. To me, my favorite saw is the one that's sharp, runs really good, is in my hands. That's my favorite. I am non-denominational when it comes to saws. I like them all. There are some I like better than others in each brand, and there's some that I don't like really at all. And generally, for the most part, you're going to get what you pay for. Generally, but not always. Sometimes there are diamonds in the rough. And there are certain brands that have really good saws that may not be the most expensive one, but they might be an awesome saw. So sometimes you pay more for the name. Sometimes you don't pay very much at all, but you don't get very much. So there's that. The three major brands, and I know there's lots of others and people are going to be screaming, well, but you forgot this brand and that brand. No, I didn't forget them. I just don't have them. There's a lot of good brands out there. They all work. The major brands are obviously your top three are going to be Husqvarna, Stihl, and Echo. Those three are the ones that pretty much dominate the market. Yes, there's a bunch of other ones out there, but these are the main ones, and I've got a few of the oddballs here. I call them oddballs because you don't see them everywhere, and not a lot of people even know about them. So my first chainsaw I ever owned was a little Poulan. It was a wild thing that I got for free with a promotional thing, and that was my first chainsaw I got as an adult. I was newly married, and I entered something when I was working, and I got a certificate to get a free chainsaw, and it was my Poulan wild thing. After that, I bought a Husqvarna 455 because my brother had Husqvarna chainsaws, and he said, get a Husqvarna. He says, I got extra parts and stuff. I know how to work on them, so that's what I got. And then he said, oh, no, you bought the wrong one. You got a weenie saw. You need to get a professional saw. There is a difference, and I recommend the professional saws. But today we're going to talk about brands and what's the best brand for you to get and why. Now, it might not be one particular thing that is going to be a reason why you get a saw. No, sometimes people are taken in by advertising, which to me is a bunch of lying pretty much. People are just trying to tell you that theirs is the best, but it's not necessarily so. They all make good stuff, and if they didn't, they wouldn't be in business. Now, there's one company in particular that spends more money on advertising than all the others. Just saying. And they have a very wide market. Now, the market share for Stihl is like around 1.6 or 1.5 billion, I believe, annually is what their sales are. Second is Husqvarna. They're like 1.2 billion. Husqvarna is a much older company. They've been around for well over 300 years, like 360 years or something like that. Stihl has been around for many decades. I don't remember exactly when they started. It was a long time ago, before I was born. Echo is probably the newest company. They were started in the early 70s, I believe, and their annual sales are less than $1 billion. They're less than 500 million, actually, which is still a lot of money. But those are the main three. So we're going to talk about mainly those three and then some of the other ones and talk about the differences and why you might choose one over the other. And to me, it doesn't matter. If you're happy, good for you. So one of the first things you should ask yourself is the saw available in a lot of places? Is there a lot of dealerships? Are there a lot of service places you can take it? Are they available in over-the-counter and box stores? Are they available in small towns, big towns, across the world, across the United States, across wherever you live, so that when you're on location, can you get it fixed? Can you get parts? Do they have really good retailers? Stihl is probably one of the most widely available saw brands there is because they have pro shops everywhere. Every town in America seems to have like 5 or 6 of them. They're just everywhere. And they are now available in some of the box stores. They're available at a couple of them, and some of the smaller retails will have them also. They're supposed to only be available originally, you had to go to a pro shop to get them, but now they're available at several box store realtors like Northern Tool. They're available at some hardware stores. You'll find them at some of the Ace hardware stores, I believe. So they have dealerships all over the place. So if you want a brand where there's going to be a lot of them, this might be the one. One of the major things to consider in your brand choice is cost. This brand tends to be the most expensive. They spend a lot of money in advertising and you're paying for that. That's just the way it is. They're a good brand. They make good stuff. But You got to realize there are saws that are behind me that you can get for less than $100. Some of the off-brand ones, some of the ones that are the prosumer or the what's called the homeowner saws. This is a professional saw. This is about a $1,500–$1,600 saw. And Stihl has saws all the way up to $2,300. And Husqvarna has saws that are around $2,000. They're $3,120, and then the Stihl, it's the 881, $2,300. Or you can get a little bitty weenie saw, as my brother calls them, for less than $100. So what's your budget? You got to think about that. With Stihl, you're paying for the name. Now, one of the benefits of paying more for a saw is it's worth more and it'll hold its value better if you take care of it. Stihl chainsaws and Husqvarna chainsaws and Echo chainsaws, the top three, tend to hold their value pretty good. Stihl is probably one of the best saws as far as retaining value. So if you pay more, it's kind of an investment. So this is a pretty good one here, if it lasts and if you don't kill it. So there's that. So like I said before with this saw in particular, you're paying for the name, but that can be a good thing because it's popular. That can be a bad thing because you're paying for the advertising. It's just the way it is. If they want to sell their stuff, they got to let people know about it. The more they advertise, the more they cost, because that's got to be paid for. So you're paying for the advertising. It's just the way it works. Another thing a lot of people think about is, how does it look? Is it pretty? I know there's a lot of people that think they have pretty trucks because they wash them all the time. They baby them. They never haul more than a loaf of bread. And yeah, they never get in the dirt because it's a pretty truck. Now, I think Husqvarnas are the best looking ones myself. Maybe because I've had them for a while, but I just think they look better. I like the orange. Not a fan of orange and white like Stihl. I just don't like the white. I do like the Echoes quite a bit. The one you see back over here, that is a nice saw too. I like the black and the orange together. But as far as looks, I think these are the best looking. They kind of look like their owner. Pretty. The next thing I like to ask myself is, do I like the way the saw feels in my hand? And to me, I like the feel and the ergonomics, which is the layout of the handles, the triggers, the buttons, the things that you use on the saw. I like the Husqvarna saws the best. Stihls are okay. I don't like their switch, it's wrong. Not a fan of their caps, but they run great. They're good saws. Echo, back here again, very nice saws. I like their stuff too. But overall, if I had to pick one for looks and ergonomics, this would be the one. Husqvarna. I just like the way they look. I like the way they feel. I like the way they handle. The next question you got to ask yourself is, how long does the saw last? How long do others have them for? Have they had them for a very long time? But you got to also ask yourself, how much do they cut? If they cut a lot, they're probably going to know. If they don't cut that much, they don't know. There are a lot of people that are fanboys of particular brands, but don't really use the brand. If you really want to find out which products are really good, find out people that have used all the brands, not just one of them, because they're going to be biased. Find out from someone who has run all the different saws, what they like about them, what they don't like about them, how they ran, how long they lasted, those kind of things. Now, I've heard good things about Husqvarna, I've heard good things about Echo, I've heard good things about Stihl. So there, it's kind of a toss-up as far as how long they're going to last. But ask some other people that know. That'd be my opinion. The next question you got to ask yourself, do they have a service shop? Is there a place where you can go get it fixed when you've got problems? Now, the three major brands, Husqvarna, Stihl, and Echo, all have service shops pretty much everywhere. Maybe not where you live, but wherever you live, you may want to find out what's available within a reasonable distance. And that might be the brand you want to go with, because no matter what brand you pick or choose or buy, if you cut a lot, you're eventually going to need stuff fixed. There are wear parts, there are things that need to be replaced. You may have a problem someday where you accidentally drop a tree on a chainsaw and you need to get some stuff fixed that you can't do yourself. I wouldn't know anything about that. It can happen, just saying. The next thing to consider is the warranty. Now, Echo has a 5-year warranty. Other saw companies do not have 5-year warranties unless you buy a whole bunch of extra goodies that they make you buy, like fuel or mix oil, stuff like that. Echo, you get 5 years. Most other saws, you get 1 or 2 years. So that says a lot. If someone gives you a long warranty, it's generally because they know the numbers, because they're not going to do it to lose money. They know that their saws are going to last longer, be more dependable, that they can afford to do it. So that says a lot. When a company has a long warranty, that's a good thing. So there's that. The next thing is looks. I think the Echo 7310, that's this saw right here, is one of the best looking saws on the market. It just looks cool. And if that's your thing, if you want to look cool, this is a pretty nice one. I also like the Husqvarna quite a bit. Not as much of a fan of the steels. Again, like I said, I really don't care for the white, but that's just me. But this Echo is a very nice one. Now, that's not true of all the Echoes. This is a gem in their line because this one has the black and the orange, and that's not true of all of them. They have some other ones that are just orange, which are nice, they're okay. But I really like this black and orange combo here as far as looks. And if looks is the thing you're after, this is a pretty good one. Kind of looks like me, it's kind of sharp, isn't it? The other nice thing about this Echo is that it costs a lot less. When you look at similar size saws in the Husqvarna, and especially the steel line, this is a 73cc saw, so in the 70cc range, you're going to have a steel chainsaw that's going to be a 462, I believe, and that saw is going to be $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 maybe, somewhere in there. And if you're looking at a Husqvarna, it's going to be a 572, and you're looking at $1,100, $1,200, somewhere in that range. This saw right here you can get for $900 or less if you can get it on sale. So it costs less. So if you're looking to not spend a lot of money and get a good saw, this might be the one. So when you compare saws, look at the features of each saw brand. Look at the size of the saw, the bars that are offered, what the saw will do, the different ergonomics on it, the switches, how it's made. Those things all matter. And in the Echo line, you're going to pay less per cc. So there's that. Consider that. They're good saws. Another thing to consider is how does the saw run? Not when it's just idling, but when it's in your hands. When you're cutting with it, is it smooth? That's the only word I can come up with to describe the Husqvarna saws. When I cut with the Husqvarnas, they're just smooth. They are just smooth running. When you're cutting, they just have great anti-vibe. They were the ones to come up with it a long time ago when they increased the anti-vibration in the handles. Years ago, for you guys that have been around a long time know this, some of the younger guys might not, there was a time when chainsaws did not have any anti-vibe in it and you would get numb fingers. Your hands would literally go numb from running the saws. So there's that to think about. And I think the Husqvarnas are the smoothest. And I would say the second place would be the Echo, is the next smoothest, in my opinion. And then the steel. Steel is not quite as smooth, a little more rough, a little more vibration, a little stiffer. These are just awesome. If you watch a saw in slow motion when it's running, when it's just sitting there idling, you will see the anti-vibe, how the whole thing just flexes because of their spring system they have in here. I really like the Husqvarnas for the anti-vibe. I also like the way they sound. Now, when it comes to sound, I think the Husqvarnas are a little more higher pitched. I think the steels are a little bit more low, which a lot of people say equates that they have more torque, and then the Husqvarnas are a little more high-end, high revving, and have more RPMs. Maybe true. Don't know. I'm not a numbers guy. That's just my feeling when I run them. These are higher pitched, faster running. Steels are maybe a little bit more torque, a little bit more low end, a little bit lower sound to them. They have a little different sound. And then the Echo is a little different yet, has a little different sound to it, but it's also smooth. They're all good saws. Another thing to consider, if you're going to buy a used saw, something that maybe is not even on the market anymore, like this McCulloch 700 here. This is Bert's, and great saw, runs really cool. Very nice, no anti-vibe whatsoever. This is a numb finger kind of running saw, but it sounds cool. Now, to some guys, they like that. Some guys like the old stuff. Some guys like old trucks. Some guys like old everything. I am not that guy. I want the new stuff. I want the latest, greatest, fastest, best made, highest quality stuff out there, whatever that is. I think advances have been made, and I like the advances. So there's this saw. There's also some other brands you can get that are not made anymore, and they're cool and everything, and they have nostalgia and all that. So when I cut, I'm cutting for production. I'm not cutting to play, although I kind of play while I work, but I want the saw to cut as fast as possible, as cleanly as possible. I want it to be as easy as possible for me so that I'm not fighting the saw, which a lot of bigger, older saws you're going to fight. I want the safest saw. Now this one does have a brake, but a lot of the old saws do not have brakes. They don't have a lot of stuff. They are just not safety conscious. They never were back in the day, in the old time. I mean, there was a time when they put a handle on the back side of the saw, on the end of the bar here, so two guys could cut with a guy hanging on the end of the saw. Not exactly the safest thing in the world. I want the safe saw, the fast saw, the sharp saw, the saw that gets the most work done the fastest, and this is not it. This is a fun saw though. Another consideration is how loud is the saw. This is my Husqvarna 592. It is a screamer. I wear earplugs and muffs all the time, mainly because of this saw. It's extremely loud. And that is one of the reasons why I like saws that aren't so loud, is because I value my hearing. Now I'm already 50% deaf in my left ear and about 20% in my right ear, and it's mainly from shooting and cutting and using power tools my whole life basically. So how loud it is matters. This is a loud one, and that's one of the benefits of an electric saw. The battery operated ones, they're not very loud. So there's that. That is a nice thing. I do like that. So when people ask me, oh, Chris, you should get a saw ported. I'll port one for you. Send me a saw, I'll port it. I don't want louder. I really don't. And the little bit of speed you gain, maybe it's worth it, but I value my hearing more than a little bit of speed. These are loud. The next question you got to think about is the saw, not just the cost, but what's it going to cost you to get it repaired, and can you get it repaired? Now, if you buy a brand that is off-brand, something from China, possibly that isn't made in the United States, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of saws that are made there that maybe have the brand name that's United States brand. This Black & Decker is an example of that, made in China. The $99 saw. There's a lot of saws you can get that are super cheap, but they are not something that you're gonna buy and then use for a very long time. If you're gonna buy a saw that you're gonna use a lot, pay more, get a pro saw. These amateur saws are basically disposable. These are saws that you use once or twice, and then maybe 3 or 4 years from now, you use it again once or twice. These are not the saws that you're gonna buy to do any kind of production. But if you're a person who only needs a saw for a little bit, this is a good choice. The other good choice would be to get an electric saw, because that way you're not gonna have fuel sitting it, going bad, causing problems, and having it be issues. So these little cheap saws are basically disposable. Yes, you probably can fix them. You might be able to find the parts, but that's one of the reasons to go with one of the major brands, the Echo, the Stihl, and the Husqvarna. They are going to have the parts available because they are commonly made. They're widely available all over the place. That's one of the things you got to think about. So generally, my opinion is, don't buy a weenie little bitty saw. Buy a pro saw. It'll hold its value better. It'll run better. It'll work better. It'll perform better. Everything about it is better. And if you go to resell it, you're going to get more for it. Something like this, like I said, it's kind of a disposable saw. The next issue you got to think about with your saw that you're going to buy, if you're going to use one especially, can you even get the parts anymore? Is the saw even made anymore? Does anybody make replacement parts? Some of these older saws are hard to find stuff for. I know that Bert went through quite a bit trying to fix his 700 that's sitting back here, because there's not a lot of parts available. Basically, when it got repaired, the parts had to be found on eBay or from third-party sellers, because they don't make them anymore and they're hard to find. So if you're going to buy a used saw, make sure you get one that either you're not worried about that, or you can get the parts to fix it, because stuff does break. So old saws are cool and everything, but unless you're a super good mechanic and unless you've got someone that can work on your saw for you and fix stuff, that's one of those things you better think about. I myself, like I mentioned, I want the best, newest, fastest, most goodest saw. That's what I want. I want the new stuff. So there's a bunch of things for you to consider when you're going to be buying a chainsaw. Whatever brand it is that you want, think about those things. They all matter, but decide what matters most to you. Look at all the variables, look at all the things you can do, and these are the good ones here in my opinion. So there you go. That's all I got for today, folks. You know what to do. Poke the buttons. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 5:30 a.m. with another video for you. Good night, Irene.